lovelies, my name is Jessica and welcome to Makeup Misfit, and this is part 2 of if I had to declutter one or if I had to keep one. I have gone through the first 7 brands in part 1 and I'm going through the second 7 brands in this part here. So if you haven't seen the first one, go check that out if you're interested, but let's get into this one, and I'm just going to show you what is sitting in front of me right now, which is Huda Beauty. So I have 3 palettes from Huda. Now this rose quartz palette I have not used yet, so I don't have an opinion or anything on it, but this is just a beautiful palette. I've heard such good things about it, especially the formula. And I have the Mercury Retrograde palette, which I absolutely love. This is my Panning Solitaire palette, so you can see how much love has gone into this. Now, I heard that this formula is even better than this one, and I really do enjoy the formula of this one, so I'm very excited to reach for that. And then I have my Neon Pink palette, and I do enjoy this one as well. I do have a pan in here in the shimmer shade. I really haven't used this in a long time. I had this, I think it was in my Alice in Wonderland project in the very beginning. I should have used it today. It matches my sweater. And I did enjoy it, but it just took me so long to even show any usage on this pink shade here that I ended up rolling it out and just kind of decided that I was done with it. So for that reason, this palette would be the one that I would declutter, just because it was a lot harder to use. Now, the one that I would keep is going to be my Mercury Retrograde palette. Packaging wise, color story wise, this is just my heart. And I do think that the formula is a little bit different. So I find that it has been easier for me to hit pan on the shades in this palette, minus the Hot Mess shade right there that I'm still trying to work through. But that's okay, it is what it is. I feel like trying to hit pan in the bright pink shimmer shade from the Neon Pink palette took a lot longer. I had more uses on it and it doesn't even look like it's been used. So I would definitely keep this one and get rid of this one. Now, Too Faced, this is probably the brand that I have the most eyeshadow palettes from. So I have a couple of the minis. The first one is the mini Salted Caramel palette. This was super pretty. I only used it a few times, but I did enjoy it when I used it, and I liked the looks that came out of it. The other mini one is the mini Gingerbread Spice. Now, I did not have the original gingerbread or the original gingerbread spice, so I figured why not pick this one up when it was for sale a couple of years ago. I actually bought both of these together and I'm really happy that I did. The latest one to my collection is the Teddy Bear palette. So I have not used this one yet, but I bought it at Winners or Marshalls and it was like $16. So I couldn't pass it up because I have been wanting, oh my goodness, everything's so reflective. I have been wanting to try it. So I figured I would pick it up for $16, and when I get around to using it, I get around to using it. And then I have 2 of the original, like the tin packaging. So I have the Pumpkin Spice palette, which I had this shade here, You Spicy, in Panda's eyeshadows in the very beginning. I had about 12 uses on it before I rolled it out because I was making no progress on it. You really couldn't see anything. These are very hard pressed. So you do technically get your money's worth for it, but when it comes to a panning perspective, it takes a very, very long time to hit pan in here. But I do enjoy the color story. And then my love, my heart, my everything, the only Too Faced chocolate bar palette that I have is the Chocolate Bonbons palette. And I have made so much progress and there is just so much love on here. And you can see the amount of shades that have been completely finished, the ones that are like almost there. I'm finished this one. I'm just like so in love with this palette. There's definitely shades in here that I would get rid of, like pretty much this whole bottom row plus this purple shade. But there is still shades that I want to work on and completely work through and finish off out of this palette. So out of all of those, I think the one that I would actually get rid of and declutter is the mini Gingerbread Spice. Only because I've only used it a few times, but when I did, I wasn't as thrilled about it as I thought I was going to be. Now, I'm glad that I don't actually have like the full size these tin packaging in the gingerbread or the Gingerbread Spice palette. I thought that this was a good condensed size, and I'm happy that this is the one that I have out of all of them. But I could have probably passed on this one. I just wanted I wanted it to try it because I felt like I kind of missed out on the other two. Even though I wasn't like super into the color story of the other two, I thought that this was just a good condensed version of it. And then honestly, the one that I would keep is probably the pumpkin spice palette, just because I feel like the color story in here, you have your darker tones for fall and winter, you have your lighter tones for spring. You could wear this year round, and you can definitely mix and match the size. Like, you obviously don't have to use one side for one time of the year and the other side for the other, but I feel like you could just get a lot more use on this year round and a lot more looks out of it that way. And I did enjoy using it, and it is like the newer one. Well, besides this one, it is the newest one, so the formula is still really good in here, and I do like it. So that is Too Faced. Now I have ColourPop. So I have 3 from ColourPop. I have the Little Ray of Sunshine, I have Going Coconuts, and I have the Lizzie McGuire palette. So we're gonna start with this one. I'm just gonna state right now, this is the one I would keep 100%. This is the color story. You can see I have pan in here. This was in pan was eyeshadows at one point. For about a month, I had used it. I want to say it was like 12 times, and then I had hit pan on it. It's just a very pretty color story. Lizzie McGuire was my childhood, so there's absolutely no way I would ever get rid of this. I will hold on to this until I die. And then the other two is Going Coconuts and Little Ray of Sunshine. So Going Coconuts was my first palette by... Please don't mind this mess up here. This was my first ColourPop's palette, and I really do enjoy using this. I think it's a very pretty neutral palette for every day. And then Little Ray of Sunshine, I was very excited about purchasing this one. Again, this one was in Pan Those Eyeshadows. I have a lovely bunch from here in Pan Those Eyeshadows. And I thought that this would be a very pretty color story. Now, I think out of these two, I would probably declutter this one. As much as I wanted it, as excited as I was when I bought it and when I got it in, I just feel like for convenience wise that Going Coconuts would be a better palette to just have for an everyday basis. This I would reach for more in the fall, maybe a little bit come spring, summertime, just because of the yellows. But other than that, I feel like this is just more gravitated towards fall for me. Whereas even though I like to use bright colors in the summer and stuff, this is just an easy, everyday, quick, one and done, do something fast kind of palette. So I have a few brands left. I have ABH sitting in front of me. So I have 3 palettes from ABH as well. I have the Amrezy palette, Soft Glam, and Norvina. So the Amrezy palette I have not actually used yet either. So this is what the color story is looking like, and it's very pretty. And then these 2 palettes were my Pan That palette for last year. So this is where Norvina is sitting at right now. So much progress on that palette. And Soft Glam is looking like this. Again, so much use on this palette. Now, out of these 3, the one that I would keep is the Amrezy palette. One, because I haven't used it yet, so I do want to actually do that and get a good opinion on it. But this Barb shade right here is like the one shade that I'm so excited about in this palette, and I've just like... probably that one shade alone plus the color story is why I would want to hold on to this. And then the packaging, because it's pink, because it's glittery, because it's me, I would want to hold on to it for the packaging wise as well. Now, where it's getting tough is deciding on the one that I would actually declutter. So, surprisingly but not surprisingly, I would go with the Norvina palette. Now, this is based off of the state that this palette is in as of today. So because it's looking so used and abused and loved, and my 2 favorite shades in this palette are finished, I would get rid of this one at the state that it's in right now. If I had Dreamer and Wild Child in this palette, I would 100% want to keep this. Those 2 shades I've loved from pretty much the beginning. Dreamer was the first shade that I had hit pan on and the first shade that I completely used up. And then Wild Child, even though it was flakier, it was a beautiful shimmer shade as well, and I loved wearing it. That was the one shade that I wish they sold as a single, because I would repurchase just Wild Child and be happy. And same with Dreamer. If they had come out with those 2 as singles, I would 100% be purchasing those just like that. But based off of the state that those palettes are in as of right now, Norvina would be the one that I would declutter just because I feel like I'm kind of done with it a little bit. And I've gotten my favorite shades out of there, and I've gotten my use out of it. So I have a few more palettes here, a couple more brands. I'm going to go with Natasha Denona. I only have these two. It's the Mini Lila and the mid-size palette in the Love palette. So this is the one I would keep. Like, neither of these color stories really grab me, but I purchased the Love palette because it was 50% off, and I really did want to get a good idea of the formula because I wanted the retro palette. And just based off of the formula of this one and wanting the retro palette, this actually made me want that more. So this is the one I would hold on to. I do like the size of it. But this is the one I would keep. And then the one that I would get rid of course, is this Mini Lila palette. And it's really just because when I used this, I didn't like it. The color story is not the greatest for me. Like, I'm really not into this blue shade, but I just found like the formula was harder for me to use. Whereas this one, even though I purchased it much later, this one was easier. I found it blended better. I just liked it and enjoyed it more, even though the color story is not 100% me, even though I'm really into like the pinks and everything. I would 100% keep this one over this one. Now we're going to discuss Melt. I have 3 palettes from Melt. I have the Rust, I have the Gemini, and I have the Radioactive. So the Rust palette, or no, this is the Gemini palette. This is the Rust palette. Okay, so the Gemini palette, I was so excited when I was finally able to get my hands on this. I think that this was the palette that made me really enjoy and love just the grungy greens and the neutrals and everything like that. Like, I've always loved neutrals, but just this color story, I think this was the palette that did it for me. I've used this one a few times. It was in my Alice in Wonderland project, I want to say back in October, and I loved the looks that I got out of it. Next is the Radioactive palette. The packaging on this is like what got me alone, but the color story is beautiful. It's a very bright color story. It's mainly mattes. I think there's a couple of shimmers. I'm not the biggest fan of their shimmers. I think maybe it's just this teal shade and maybe the light purple, the yellow. I don't know. It's too hard for me to see right now. But the color story on here is beautiful. I love how bright these shades are. And then the Rust palette is just your simple color story, your neutrals, very pretty, very fall time as well. So I think the one that I would hold on to absolutely would be the Gemini palette. Like I said, I was so excited when I was able to get my hands on this, and I enjoyed the shades that came out of it, or the looks that came out of it. I really, really liked this one. Now, the one that I would get rid of is kind of a toss-up. I'm having a hard time because when I have used this one, it's only been a couple of times, and I wasn't really thrilled with the formula, but at the same time, I wasn't super thrilled with this one either. And I feel like I just have so many neutral shades that maybe the Rust palette is the one that would go. I love the packaging. I love it on both of them. And I really don't reach for this one when I'm thinking like bright shades. But I love how neon it is. So I think I would get rid of the Rust palette, surprisingly. And then last but not least, so I just have 2 brand new palettes from Blend Bunny. So this one's going to be very difficult because I really just started using these ones. This is the Dollhouse and this is the Surge palette. So the Dollhouse palette, I've literally only used 2 shades in here, but I've used it like 2 or 3 times. This side here. This is in Baby Doll and Tulle. Now you can see the usage in Tulle. I would just use Baby Doll in the crease and just build it up, and then I would use Tulle all over the lid, and then I paired it with, I think it was Oob from my Looksy single, and I would put that on the lid, and it was the most beautiful, very light but very pretty eye look, and I absolutely loved it. So I've worn that one a few times. And then the Surge palette, I bought this for this bottom row. Now, of course, it's the only row that I've used so far, and I have used all 6 shades. I'm really excited to reach for this top row. Fall time would be this row, and I'm really looking forward to using more of these shimmers. This center row is not really me. It's a little bit too dark for my liking, so I feel like I could skip out on that. But I had a bachelorette a couple weekends ago, and it was 80s themed, so of course I reached for all of these shades. And what I did was just kind of opposite eye looks. So On one eye, I used these 3 shades on the lid, and then on the opposite side, I used them on the bottom lash line, and then I used these on the bottom lash line when I used this on the lid, and vice versa for the other eye. And it was the craziest, most fun. I loved the eye look. I had some issues with my eyes that day, so unfortunately it only lasted a little bit, but I loved it so much. So I think, oh, this one's gonna be hard. I don't even know. I don't even want to do it for this one because they're just so brand new to my collection. I think I would hold on to the Surge just because I feel like I could have a lot more fun with it, and let go of the Dollhouse. But I love the fact that it's a very pretty neutral palette, and you can get a lot of looks out of this too. Very bridal, which I might actually use this for my dad's wedding in a couple of days, so we'll see. But I feel like just because it's a neutral palette, this is the one I would get rid of. I would hold on to the Surge just because I could have more fun with it. So that is the last 7 brands that I have. So I have officially gone through all 14. Go check out the first video if you haven't seen it. What I'm going to do, I think, is go through the palettes that I only have the one of and let you guys know if that one palette that I have from that brand would make me want to purchase another palette from that brand. Let me know what you think of that idea. I'm really thinking of doing that video as well. I'll probably film it before this video even goes up, but go check that one out as well if you're interested. Should be up shortly after this one. But that's everything. So let me know what palettes you guys would hold on to, which ones you would declutter if you have any of these brands, and if you agree with me on any of these, or if you have opposing opinions, let me know. Let's chat about it because I think it'd be a lot of fun. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys all later. Bye.